would happen if we were just able to acknowledge the fact that humans are trying to human and humaning is hard and running the business is hard too. And I'm not trying to downplay any difficulties people are navigating in the so-called practical realm, but I'm learning more and more that the so-called practical realm is never outside of humaning, ever. It's never outside of humans trying to human. So might we get better at the so-called practical things if we actually got better at the humaning part?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another year and another season of the Tourpreneur Travel Business Podcast. I am your host, as always, Mitch Bach, and this is our first episode of a brand new year, 2026, 2025. What a year it was. We're tossing out the window. We're looking forward. And this year, we're also going to be introducing a whole new range of Tourpreneur guests, people who you might not know of, and also people who are looking at the travel industry through very different lenses. And there is nobody I wanted to start this year off more than with someone who I met last year at our conference. Those of you who are in Charleston, South Carolina will remember my guest, Dr. Taranath, from our opening keynote speech. She really set an incredible tone for the conference. I know so many of you have gotten value out of her insights, and she's sort of an accidental travel industry participant, even an accidental tour operator of sorts. If you do know her, you may have discovered her book, Beyond Guilt Trips, during COVID. It was published just before the pandemic, and it became kind of a breakaway success. I think probably because the entire travel industry had nothing better to do than finally read those books and reflect on what they were busy doing before. And so today, we're going to dive into her world. It's a world filled with rich insights on the ideas of justice, inequality, and what we are doing as humans, as travel industry participants, to think through our role in the world that is a fractured world, a strange world. So, Dr. Anu, I'm just going to begin by saying hello and welcome to Tourpreneur.
Hello, dear Mitch. Thank you for this beautiful conversation.
I'm wondering, for those who weren't able to join us for the conference, if you could begin by just telling us a little bit about your world of work and then also your experience at the event and what you spoke on.
I'm somewhat new to the travel industry, as you say, accidentally in it, and being in South Carolina with hundreds of folks was astonishing. I felt so welcomed by this community. And because I'm coming in from such different worlds, was a bit surprised at that, actually. Academia, which is where I've spent some of my working life, is not always as open and accepting in a variety of ways. And so when there is spaces where we can create more belonging and spaces where we can talk openly, I appreciate that very much. I'm a faculty member at the University of Washington in Seattle. I'm starting my 25th year now in a few days with a new batch of undergraduates. And I offer classes on race and power and identity and difference. Global literatures is how I bring people in by having them read and engage with the stories, narratives, and literatures from people from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Pakistan, from Trinidad. And in doing so, helping them get a sense of, first of all, who are the people that populate our world? And what are the ways that people are making sense of their lives that might look very similar to ours and might look quite different? And it's in that very sweet spot between being like me and unlike me that I find so much tension and so much promise. You can't have one without the other. We can't just say we're all alike. We can't just say we're all so different. It has to be the tension and the promise of that space in between. And so that's some of what I invite my students to consider, conceptualize, talk about. Also at the university, I've been leading programs abroad for 20 years now, as a tour operator, as a facilitator, as a bridge builder. And I do so in communities that many of my travelers have not been in, mostly places in the global south, in Black and brown lands that look, again, different than what many of my participants have experienced. And in doing so, we get to know change makers from around the world. I've led programs in Ghana and Mexico and South Africa and India, in many places. And change making looks different in different contexts. It doesn't look always like holding a placard in a protest and saying, see, look at me, look at me. Or it doesn't always mean reposting something on social media saying, look at me, look at me. I know now from my work, being with change makers from around the world, that change making is artistic, it's varied, and sometimes it's very humble and quiet. It doesn't have to be flashy and showy. Sometimes it's very quiet and understated and so powerful in its change-making capacity and impact. So that's some of the work that I do, helping ferry people from one side of the planet to the other with some tools to be able to process this. You know, anybody with some money in the bank and with passport privilege can go anywhere these days. And there's a lot of tools and technology to make that journey easy for us. I'm not so sure that easy is best all the time. I don't want to push my travelers into discomfort and despair. On the other hand, what's that good stretching space where we know that we've got a container to hold us, and I serve as that container, and also we get to stretch. Again, that's the tension and the promise space right there. In addition to some of what I've just shared with you, I also do lots of racial equity and DEI consulting, coaching, facilitation, and I work in a variety of sectors, which still astonishes me that I get to be in conversation with people from such different industries, not just academia, not just travel, but people who are doing such a wide variety of things and are also navigating the world and its inequities and their identities and their wounds and their challenges in really similar ways.
This idea of stretching
Mm.
is so interesting because we're in a very tension-filled industry.
Mm.
The tension, I see it as from the point of view of a tour guide, a storyteller, or a tour operator, is this constant tension between you being in a business, whether it's your passion or not, it's a business in which there, on one level, is a customer or a client relationship with you. Somebody who wants to be stretched, but not too stretched. Ultimately, they want to have a good time. They want to laugh. You want to deliver an experience that feels fulfilling, transformational, quote unquote.
Yes.
And and of course you have a duty to that. You're going to be out of business if you don't get those 5 stars, in this sort of sad review laden economy. And yet the real work, and I think we all know this, the real work is at the margins of difficulty or discomfort. That
Right.
actually, even that customer, whether they might not know it, is yearning not to be a customer, like not to just have that label of like, I'm sitting here judging, but to be immersed in something that is challenging and pushing them. How how should our audience be thinking about their position in this world of compromise?
For some time now, I've been understanding that there is much nuance between something being entertaining and something being meaningful.
Mm,
Sometimes these things overlap, and they don't have to be polar opposites to one another. But I am noticing in various groups that I am in that when we imagine that spaces, whether they are a classroom, whether they're a tour, whether they're a program, whether they're an office environment, whether they're any of these kinds of things, when we imagine that they should be entertaining, our expectations are high and they get dashed very quickly. On the contrary, or perhaps by contrast, experiences that are meaningful, there's a lot more flexibility in it.
mm,
There's a lot more spaciousness in something for us to craft something that is meaningful. It doesn't look like one thing. And I've been slowly over my career, as I have been in a variety of institutions, groups, contexts, geographies, cultures, I have been honing in on what actually is meaningful, or what is the range of ways that we can be meaningful together. And again, sometimes that can look like straight up entertainment, but
mhm,
making meaning together, making meaning on our own, this is what it means to navigate difficulty. This is what it means to navigate instability or a volatile political environment or fractions within the family over politics or any of these situations that stretch us, creating meaning, creating a story, being able to sift and parse and navigate our way through that, that's our task as conveners, right? Anytime you are convening people, anytime you are hosting a gathering, right? And you can be a tour operator for that, you can be a tour guide for that, you can be a teacher, you can be in anything. But when you gather people together, what meaning are we making together? And what meanings are we perhaps challenging sometimes? We'll have to go a little bit slow for this, right? Entertaining usually has a very kind of quick quality. The word that comes to mind is slapstick, right? I'm just waiting for that next laugh. I'm just waiting for something and it's quick. Making meaning and helping people create that container where you can perhaps shed some inhibitions, drop some of the armor that we're all carrying, play in vulnerability a little bit. That kind of container setting doesn't happen in 3 minutes. It's a container that takes a little bit of time, which means that our sense of, deliverables or what's possible within a 2-hour tour or what's possible in a 1-week trip or what's possible in a 10-week class or what's possible in a gathering of people for one evening, it means that our expectations should shift a little bit. And that's not a diminishment by any means. For me, it reveals so much more humanity that's present. I try not to be entertaining anymore. I like to be entertained, of course, now and then, but more and more, I want to be associated with meaning in my life and in the gatherings I get to convene and in the gatherings that I attend. What else is there at the end of the day, uh, unless we are more rooted to a sense of meaning and values and a sense that this was time well spent, not just on my tour, not just on this trip, but in my life, this was time well spent. And that doesn't happen by chasing entertainment. That happens by grounding ourselves in meaning.
That was a humbling lesson I learned when I was a guide
Mm,
years ago. I
mm,
spent my I spent years hoping that I was named in the review, that they found me the funniest person ever, that my storytelling was entertaining every single minute, that I was offering kind of an exhilarating roller coaster of an
mm,
experience.
mhm.
There's value in that. We're not diminishing that.
Yes.
And it might also just come with age or fatigue or something, but there was a moment that I understood that there was another path as well. And that
Mhm,
path is much less about you and much more about what I now call the job of guiding, which is gathering design. That
mhm,
I'm looking at these people as individuals. I'm recognizing where they come from. I'm asking questions to make sure that what I'm building, as you said, is a space that makes them feel like they belong. And then also that what I'm doing is sometimes creating just a space where I don't know what's going to happen.
mhm,
It means letting them talk more. It means going in with a sense of how to facilitate or guide an inquiry, but not tell them the truth of a place or tell them what they're meant to get out of it through my entertaining storytelling.
mhm,
Um, but that's really, really hard and it's scary. You
mhm.
don't know what's going to come from that.
I love that you shared that in your learnings, you had to learn how to drop into yourself, right? The entertaining model focuses on the other. A meaning making model starts with self, not in a narcissistic kind of way, right? That's how the culture has coded any kind of self inquiry. Oh, it must be narcissistic. Actually, I'm learning more and more that a self inquiry based in expansion brings people to the table, brings people into spaces with a little less fragility, a little
Mm,
less nervousness, a little less uh, barriers. If I'm trying to do that in the spaces that I am convening and inviting people to gather under those premises, I've had I would have had to do some of that work inside me first. I can't come in with my usual armor, with my
mm,
defenses up, with my sense of regularity insisted upon, with my discomfort with something unpredictable. Uh, if I come in with that, that's the energy that I'm hosting the gathering with.
yeah.
And more of that means less meaning, right? And I'm not trying to say that, meaning making has to be chaotic and has to be all kinds of things that might make us genuinely nervous when you've got 3 hours with a group and you need to, hit these 7 spots, or you've got 1 week with a group and you have to do certain things. Uh, m- is there a way that we can more cogently and intentionally weave meaning making into the things that we do?
Mm,
We'll have to probably rethink the things that we do if we would like to create more meaning. We can't
mm,
just continue on the treadmill that we have been schooled on. We'll
mm,
have to actually hop off
Hmm.
think about what we're actually doing together in those 2 hours, in that 1 week, in that 10-week class, in the gathering that we have this evening. We'll have to actually think about these things. And I see that being more intentional, yes, takes a little bit more time. It takes some humility. But my God, it's astonishing when people actually feel like they matter and they are valued. Isn't that what everyone is looking for? At the end of the day, at the end of a tour, at the end of a trip, at the end of a life? Isn't that what we are all seeking? And so why wait till the end of the life to create meaning or to make sense of our days on this planet? Why not infuse some of that on the way, along the way?
Hmm. Hmm. You say this word armor,
Mm,
and it feels like we're all wearing it more than ever.
mm,
That armor, when it meets other armor, produces a fight, and that's good for algorithms. That's good for politics.
mm,
It's good for all of the machine forces that are sort of colonizing our brains and our
mm.
hearts and our minds. Um, and that this kind of disarmament happens rarely. It
Mm.
rarely happen. It doesn't happen in parking lots. You get angry at the person that stole your spot. Everything's a competition. That like we're being told by all of these forces of the world, wherever we are, um, to fight for your place, to
Mm.
achieve, to compete. And we as business owners and as guides, like also are humans. And so we bring that energy into our spaces, and so do our guests. And what I hear you saying is what I think is true, which is in, very much increasingly one of the rare spots where you can be disarmed is in these types of travel experiences that stretch you and take you outside of your normal battlefield, and you feel open to joy and to others and in in new ways, but you still have that armor on.
It's good for us to note that the armor that we carry, some of it we can see, some of it we don't even know we're carrying, first of all.
Mm.
It's also good to note that likely you and I have developed armor that has helped us navigate moments when we haven't felt seen and heard and cared for, and there hasn't been containers of respect and opportunity and connection. When you don't have that, of course, armor accumulates and builds up. So it helps me reminding myself of why we carry armor helps to ground me when I am seeking to invite folks to lay some of their armor down, right? Simply coming in and saying this is wrong might not be the best strategy because we are coming in with a whole set of experiences, some which are happening in this life, some which have happened in our ancestral lineage. We're coming in with hurt, some of us. We are coming in with disconnect, deep, deep disconnect. We are coming in with so much scarcity coursing through our nervous system. And an unequal world, some of that gets magnified. Some of that gets exacerbated. Some of us might have some opportunity for some repair here and there, but most of what I see is that unless you've had some really good therapy and some really good uh, rooted connection in your life, most of your wounds increase. And so that, reminding myself of that helps me be more courageous when I am hosting gatherings, small or big gatherings, and I would like to create more meaning together. It means that I have to be brave also. It means that I have to be really aware of my own armor, the conscious armor that I know that I carry, and the unconscious ways that I have been schooled to shut down, protect, ensure my reputation, all of those kinds of armors that we have normalized as simply professionalism, or that
Mm,
we have normalized as simply that's what it takes to make it in this world. Uh, I'm not so convinced of that anymore. I have a lot more skepticism around some of the narratives that I was taught. I also have a lot more faith in my intuition and in what's coming up for me these days. Um, Trying to be brave and invite others to be brave. It's not something that you do once and you can check it off and say, okay, fine. See, last December I did that, or last October on the 4th, I learned how to be brave and I'm done. It's actually a circular process, right? It's a regenerative, it's an iterative process. And so my bravery or courageousness or intentionality or comfort with slowing down or comfort with not being put together, whatever that means, or my comfort at spilling the beans on my past, or all of these kinds of things. These are intentional ways that we chip at some of that armor. And if I do it, but I'm panicked about it, then I'm teaching others who are watching me or who are interacting with me that we might risk, but holy shit, oh my God, what's going to happen? So that's why so much of the work that I'm uh, invested in and that I'm a part of these days begins really with self. Y-
mm,
We have to do some of that deep rooted excavation. Some of it's messy, some of it's actually just very practical. How did I learn what professionalism is? How did I learn what it means to be a man in the world? How did I learn that my group is different than that group? Right? I mean, this is armor, right? Armor is not just about, tender wounds that have happened to me when I was 8 or 15. These are social wounds. Social wounds affect us on the individual level. So again, anytime we are trying to gather individuals who are in society, we are bringing in the tender wounds of somebody who was 5 and something happened, and 15 and 76. So their particular stories are coming into the room, but also just us as people, we're bringing social stories into the room also. So being aware of some of these layers helps me as a teacher, facilitator, inviter, a gatherer. It helps me regulate myself better, and it helps me create that container that I was sharing earlier. That container isn't airtight. That container doesn't always know what's going to happen. That container can be unpredictable, but it's a container that for the evening that we're together, or for the tour that we're on, or for the trip that I'm leading, it's a container that allows people to feel a bit more open, a bit less poised to pounce. There's a lot of pouncing energy these days, isn't there? Lots of pouncing energy. And oof, I mean, what's happening energetically? What's happening to the planet? What's happening in our hearts and minds and families and bedrooms and boardrooms and house? All kinds of things are happening. So gathering a little differently to me has huge consequence. It's like that butterfly effect that we know, right? Something that's happening on one side of the planet in a seemingly very small way can have some incredible consequences elsewhere.
Mm.
I don't take myself too seriously, but I also don't take myself too lightly. And
Mm.
again, that's that kind of tension and promise in between
Mm.
space.
Mm.
Nothing that I'm doing is like, quote, changing the world. Nothing so big and dramatic. On the other hand, spaces that I get to actually craft and be in, and where people feel a little bit more seen and heard and nurtured in honesty, especially about things that we haven't had much honesty about, like race and power and history and harm and healing, right? When you
Mm.
have a little bit more spaciousness around that, I'm not, quote, changing the world. No magic wand for me, but that space matters.
Mm.
Those connections, whether they're temporary or permanent, that matters deeply.
One of the consequences of what I hear you saying is, for example, if you are a business owner with a team of guides, that as much as those guides need to read the manual, show up on time, be professional, wear the uniform, memorize the script, that there's another level of self-work, of self-awareness, of jostling some of those assumptions and
Yeah.
some of those feelings that we carry into a tour. Some of that work is part of the work of recognizing who you are and how you show up in a space with people, and that matters in some ways just as much as what's coming out of your mouth in terms of the accuracy of the
Certainly.
facts and the knowledge.
But we're scared to go there.
I
Where,
know right now there's already
right?
people who are like, what is this crap? Is this what Tourpreneur is like now? Is it going to be just a bunch of, like wellness woo-woo meditation practice? I know, but because it's like my job is hard enough as a business owner. Like I'm trying to squeeze what little profits I can back into my family and pay my
Mhm.
guides, pay my taxes in a
Yeah.
world of increasing expenses.
Yes.
And so this feels optional, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. And part of maybe what I hope that kind of person can get from this at a first level is question that reaction. Like
Mm,
begin by asking yourself, why do I feel so certain that this isn't what I'm doing as a tourism professional?
One thing that I have learned from working in a variety of sectors is that everyone is trying to learn how to be human a bit better. We're just trying to human. And humaning can be challenging. Humaning is funny. Humaning is messy. Humaning is illuminative. It's a lot of things. But the humaning is what we're doing first. We are also running a business. We are also taking this many people on a tour. We're also doing that. We're also a mother. We're also doing a range of things. And I wonder what would happen if we were just able to acknowledge the fact that humans are trying to human and humaning is hard and running the business is hard too, or
Mm.
figuring out what to do with my 43 people as I am walking around Rome with them is hard, or any of these kinds of things. Yes, that is difficult. And I'm not trying to downplay any difficulties people are navigating in the so-called practical realm. But I'm learning more and more that the so-called practical realm is never outside of humaning,
Mm.
ever. It's never
Mm.
outside of humans trying to human. So might we get better at the so-called practical things if we actually got better at the humaning part?
Mm.
If we could just recognize that we're trying to human and humaning is hard, and let's support each other better in being humans together. That to me doesn't seem optional. That to
Mm,
me doesn't seem like, yeah, I'll get there when my business turns X amount of profits. That
mm,
doesn't seem viable to me
mm.
because once again, what are we waiting for? Like the deathbed to like find some meaning in our life? I mean, I would like to be able to certainly find meaning in my day to day, and I would like to be in spaces where people feel rehumanized
Mm.
together. Whether it's a 2-hour conversation over chai or whether it's a, 1-month tour that I'm leading. How do we rehumanize one another in ways that allows us to really bring the fullness of ourselves in?
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
l- let's also talk about the deep, deep inequities and the deep, deep ways that many people have been disparaged in a range of ways. Many people have not felt like they can actually bring themselves into spaces and be safe and be okay and be seen in our complexity. These aren't lofty goals. This is the foundation of us. It's not something way up here. Once I get the promotion, I can think about it. Once I turn a profit, once anything happens, then. It's
mm.
not that, it's not an if then. It, it's happening on a day-to-day fundamental level. Humans are trying to human. So can my business get better if I paid a little bit more attention, mindful attention, not resentful attention? If you're going to put resentment into it, I'd rather you not. There's no need. Please don't.
Move
But
along.
yeah, but if there's like some curiosity and a little bit
Mm,
of pause that anybody is feeling as they're hearing us speak, right? And who can feel like, yeah, a lot of like, what the hell is she talking about? Doesn't she know that I have X and Y to do? Or I have X and Y to perform or any of these things? Great. Feel it. Feel that rush of adrenaline that's coming up as you hear this. Feel it. And you know that and is my most favorite word. And is there a little space for curiosity? Just a little bit, even a glimmer, a sliver of curiosity about, what does that mean about like we're trying to human? And what would it actually mean to rehumanize the way that my business is run or the
mm.
ways that I do X or Y or A or B? A little bit of spaciousness for that curiosity can take us a long way.
I think one of the walls that we put up is a wall built on the foundations of how sure of our identity and our assuredness of this is who I am, this is
Mhm.
how a
Yeah.
business is run, and hearing that actually maybe there is more to it than that is scary to think that there's a different way of doing this. And
Mhm.
I was going to say that the answer might be noticing your adrenaline and asking yourself, why do I feel so certain that this
Yeah.
person is wrong?
Yeah.
But I much prefer your answer, which is there any curiosity in me about this? Is there
Mhm.
any chance that this might actually deepen and better how I show up for my employees, for my business,
Mhm.
for my family that I'm trying to support with this business, or for myself?
You said something about being sure of our identities. And what
Hmm.
instantly came to mind for me is that some of us have not had the luxury of being sure in our identities for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so if one has had to shapeshift in order to feel okay if one has had to recraft oneself in order to feel okay, that does something to us. It stretches us. We might not have liked to feel stretched in all those ways. When I think of my life, uh, for decades, I never felt like I belonged here in the US or in India, where my family is from. I would go often as a child and as a younger person to visit auntie and uncle and grandparents and cousins. Nobody else in the US was my family. All my family was there except my parents and my brother and I here in the United States. And so having this bicultural dual geography of home actually meant that neither place was home. The racism that I experienced and my family experienced was so deep and ever present every day of my life when I was younger, every single day. So I never felt like I could just breathe when I was here in the US. And I had imagined at some point that when I would go to India, I would feel like I could breathe because everyone would look like me. But the fact that I was a product of the diaspora and that I spoke our language with a funny American accent and, I didn't know everything. And uh, it meant that I was never quite breathing deeply there either. Now, all of those experiences have certainly shaped who I am now. So my sense of self has gone through some stuff. It's settled, certainly. I'm happy to share that now it doesn't quite matter for me in the same way whether others feel like I belong. I have learned how to belong more inside myself, and I've learned to belong more to myself and to the spaces that I'm in. And that's taken a lot of time and a lot of work within me. But let's say that somebody who's listening to this, something of what I've shared resonates with their story, their personal story in some way. It might not be that they grew up in the US and their parents are from India. It might not look specifically like that, but I would imagine that many people who are listening have also not felt home in a variety of ways for all kinds of reasons. Whether they've never left their hometown or home city or have traveled, uh, that sense of being seen, understood, having that safety underneath us, more people than we imagine are grappling with that. Even again, if your
Yeah.
story looks really different than mine, more people than just me are grappling with that. I know that now. I didn't know that when I
Mm.
was younger. I thought it was just me. But what my readings and my community and my network have taught me is that many, many of us are grappling with similar issues, but in different contexts. I'm not saying mine is the same as someone else's. Our lives are very distinct and context specific. I'm not saying mine is worse or better. It's not about ranking either. It's about recognizing, right? That disconnect that I have felt in my life, that I've navigated my way through. Everybody on my tour has also felt that in some way or another. Not that your tour has to talk about it, right? I'm not saying that tours have to be a therapy session or that trips have to be this everybody spill everything that's ever happened to you. Of course not, right? There's ethical ways to build a container for rehumanizing ourselves. So
Mm.
let's not get sloppy and think that that's what I'm trying to advocate for. Of course not.
Mhm.
But again, that kind of the tension and the promise of rehumanizing each other means acknowledging that everybody is probably carrying something with them that they would like to learn how to maybe alleviate and that they would like to have a bit more meaning around. Now,
Mm.
can my business help my employees feel that in a small way? I can't make everything disappear for everyone, but in a small way, can my business do that? Can my class do that? Can my trip, can my tour offer that? In a small way. Again, there's nothing big and grand here, right? No class of mine for 10 weeks at the university is going to change a goddamn thing. And those 10 weeks matter. Absolutely they do. That my 2-hour tour matters. Of course it does. Can we rehumanize those spaces so that a few of us feel a little bit less disconnect and a little bit more plugged in to ourselves and one another? Again, isn't that what we're all wanting? We talk about, oh, what a fractured political moment we're in, what a fractured political moment. Now, the opposite of a fractured political moment or a fractured society is one where we have more bonds together, where we feel more connected, where I can be my goofy, vibrant, wonderful, dumb self, and you are invited to do the same. That's the opposite of the moment that we're in. So we can keep rehearsing how fractured we are, but let's also kind of take a moment and think about, okay, what are we actually then wanting instead of this? I want to build toward that. I don't want to just talk about what's wrong. I'd like to help create the world that I'd like to live in.
It might even start with very small tweaks to the lens with which you're looking at the trip that you're leading or designing. And I think I think about this a lot in New York City where I live. I used to guide here all the time. And a very common occurrence is 12 tour guests. 4 is a family from the Netherlands, 2 are from France, 1 is from India, and 4 are Americans. Also, don't count that up. I don't know if that's 12. And the entire trip, I'm talking like this. I'm talking at a certain rate that I'm always talking because I'm a New Yorker and I'm over caffeinated and I got to get to the next spot. And 2 of those guests don't have the English language comprehension level that the others do. The others are interacting with you because they feel naturally able to and also permitted to. And those 2 tour guests leave having seen things and taken photos, but not with a sense that I belonged in that group. It's a lens that you don't necessarily always think about when you are in that experience. Did they show up on time? Are they on the guest list? Did I check them in? And off we go to deliver my tour. But not what do I need to do in this space with this very specific set of people to make sure that everybody has a chance at feeling like they belong.
I'm not going to pretend that everything that I do makes everybody feel great. There
Yeah.
are many people who perhaps might not know what it means to let down their armor or to take a chance at being a little bit more vulnerable with their classmate or their travel companion. Uh, so part of this is noticing for us, how's it going? How's it going for me? Not just the usual metrics, but maybe taking a little bit of a deeper dive. Not just what's the tip of the iceberg, but actually diving underneath the water level and inquiring with ourselves, how's it going? Am I doing okay? That sounds like a really scary question for a lot of people. We're increasingly asked to live at the surface more and more and more as we swipe and kind of have things in our ears, and we're constantly overstimulated with the latest news reel with 1,000 other things. That has done something, I think, to us. we talk about like attention span. We talk about our ability to stay focused. So many things I think have been compromised or are in the process of being compromised the more we stay above the surface in that little small part of the iceberg that's visible. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper. That's where I find meaning, and that kind of space doesn't mean that we have to have like really serious conversations all the time. I mean, even diving under the surface and having more meaning is about play, is about being goofy together, is about showing parts of ourselves to one another that feels a little uncomfortable sometimes and also feels delightful. I'll give you a small example. I shared with you and your listeners, some of the work that I do. I am also on Instagram these days putting like fashion reels up. And it's the funnest, dumbest thing ever. I mean, I'm this, middle-aged woman who's making my daughter make small reels of me for 30 seconds and like showing off my cute earrings and being like, isn't this top adorable? And it makes me pause because the voice in my head early on was, this is not professional. This is not X or Y or A or B. And that's exactly why I'm doing it. That's exactly why I am enjoying the silliness and the playfulness and the joyousness of sharing my fab earrings with the 3 people who care, who want to watch it. That small little practice is helping me kind of dive under the surface. So it's not like, big, deep, meaningful conversations all the time is what I'm advocating. But shedding our armor means being more playful. Shedding our armor, even little bits and slivers of it, means being able to be more receptive to one another, to listen better. All of that is involved. So there's a lot of play in trying to rehumanize ourselves, lest somebody thinks it's just all serious philosophy stuff, right? There's also like playful fashion reels.
Yeah. Yeah. That's doing serious stuff under the hood.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. Right.
For our listeners who are listening to the audio right now, can you describe your earrings and your necklace that you're currently wearing?
Oh, they're fab. They're absolutely fab. You'll have to check out my reel.
Okay, I want to get back a little serious though, just for a second. Because I want to talk about another scenario. It's a tour operator that I was talking to earlier this year. And she had a difficult year. She takes American, primarily women, around the world into very specifically countries that aren't France and Italy. She takes them to Senegal. She takes them to India. And things were harder this year, partially for her because of the customers. These American that were, for example, a woman that had traveled with her several times. And this time the woman rated the trip poorly because she said the guide doesn't understand English enough, that she felt robbed of the experience because of the level of English. The food wasn't up to her standards. And, your work is based in the foundational truth of society, which is that we're in an incredibly unequal world, and that there is this central imbalance to most of how the travel industry works, which is very privileged, small fraction of the global population that has an insane amount of wealth, enough for them to wake up and decide they are going to transport themselves into a new society and ask in some ways that society bends itself around what I need and what I want. And the other side of that society, the experienced givers, saying, I need to show up and serve this person because my life, my family's life, my country's life, whatever it is, depends on it.
Mhm.
Um, she just said that it feels like it's getting worse in some ways, that the customer is more demanding, more of an armor right
Mhm.
now. Everybody I talk to, every destination puts up the slide that says we need to get more Americans. We need to make sure they travel here so we can prop up our economy or so we can keep fueling this growth. And so
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking, but what does that mean to you in the work that you do and as you come into our travel industry?
I would say that if I've made a contribution in the travel industry, it's my insistence everywhere I go that just because you go somewhere doesn't necessarily mean you are learning, stretching, unpacking. You need conscientious time to stretch, unpack, and dive under the surface, which can mean a half-hour conversation after dinner with your guests. Try not to do it on the bus because bus conversations I don't think work very well. I'm really against bus conversations to do this work. M- But intentional time, what that does is it helps sort out some of these really conflicting things that can be playing out, right?
Mhm.
I mean, in your colleagues' experiences, did the guide need to be switched to somebody whose accent was more comprehensible for the guests? I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not sure, like, what they're used to, what their ear is used to hearing. And, the Indian lilt can be unfamiliar to the American ear that hasn't heard it very often. Now, if I was in a situation like that and I could tell some disconnect was happening, I would pause and I would say to my guests, maybe not in front of my guide, but I would say to my guests, you know, our ear isn't often trained to hear accents that are different than ours. What are you noticing about that? Let's just take a pause for a minute. What are you noticing about that? Now, what that does is first of all, it makes it not that one guest's problem, and it democratizes the conversation so everybody can have not just an opinion, but an analysis around it. Like, oh, yeah, that first guest, the first guide was a little more challenging, but after I heard them for a day, I was able to really kind of hear what they were sharing. Or I'm still having a really hard time, somebody might be able to say out loud. So, pausing at key moments, even though that might feel a little scary for us, but pausing at exactly those moments where there is some disconnect or when entitlement is rearing its head, right? That that's such a rich, rich moment of learning. And you're not just trying to make sure that, the guest doesn't write the bad review. It's not simply for that reason, but it connects to what we shared earlier in our conversation about making more meaning. You're trying to make more meaning for our guest and for the experience that we're offering them. So, if we can bring to the surface some of the biases, some of the habits, some of the predispositions that all of us are carrying, if we can raise those from the subconscious level to the conscious level and be a little bit more aware of, whoa, I kind of check out when I don't hear people speak English the way that I'm used to. Huh, I'm noticing that. Whoa, let me reinvigorate my hearing and let me kind of plug back in. I've had this conversation numerous times with my guests and the folks that I travel with around accent, around bathrooms, around shaking hands, around like any cultural things that are taking place that look and feel a bit different than what my guests are used to. That is an opportunity to lean in. Small 10, 15-minute conversations about this can do wonders in a trip. This is the container building. This is how we create a container, right? By constantly plugging in to saying, I notice, I notice, I notice, I notice. I can't fix everything, but I'm noticing that, my ear kind of checks out, or I'm noticing that the food that I imagined looks different here, or the roti is a little bit more tough in this restaurant versus that restaurant. And being able to say some of this out loud on our trips actually creates more buy-in. It creates more plug-in. That's what I have found.
Mm. There's such a gentle power and disarming power to the phrase, I notice,
Yes, yes.
because
Mm,
it's the opposite of, look how weird those bathrooms are. The food is bad.
yeah.
This person can't speak English properly.
Yep.
That's kind of a default human thing, is just judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but creating that context of acknowledging in advance, hopefully, there are going to be moments of difference, and inviting the guest to simply say, I notice,
Mm-hmm.
that strikes me as really powerful.
It is. It's so simple. It's so simple. It's such a simple segue, but it's such an important bridge to something else, right? We are programmed to fear difference. We're programmed to rank and judge difference, but to notice it and to dial down our judgment. I mean, you still might not like the food. That's okay too, right?
Sure.
So we have to be okay with not always entertaining everybody all the time, but being able to put it in a little bit of a broader context helps dial down that desire to be entertained and helps dial up our conscious and sometimes unconscious desire for meaning.
I led a retreat to Morocco, and there was one day that a guest um, had a breakdown and said, this trip wasn't for me. This was not. I shouldn't have gone on this trip, and it was a bad day for her. And I sat with her and just sort of asked why a whole bunch, and it turned out to be about a lot of things
Mhm.
in her life, and not really about the trip.
Yes.
And I understood that, like, I don't mean to call her a baby or anybody, but like sometimes you just need a good cry. Like,
Yes.
part of the change making process in yourself is like
Yes.
having that moment of frustration and then realizing, you know what, you're right. This wasn't about their English. I was in the back of the bus. I could hear the hum of the engine. It was just,
Yep.
or it wasn't related to the trip at all.
Yep. But that spaciousness that you offered your guest doesn't quite jive up with a business as usual model,
Mm-mm.
right?
Or with like difficult customer resolution
Mm-hmm.
practices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The orthodoxy of customer service, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, the orthodoxy would mean
Mm.
you would be trying to make it better for her.
Right, like you got to solve it right there.
And
Like your job is, yeah,
what's there to make better when it's not really the thing that someone's complaining about? It's something
yeah.
else. It often is for all of us,
Yeah, isn't
different
that like
ways,
99% of actually
right?
our complaints?
We have a
Yeah,
bad day at work. We come home and we yell at the first, family member that, comes in our way. It's not really about them or the dishes that they didn't do or whatever. It's about
yeah,
something that happened at 11 a.m. that I'm carrying in with me as I walk in at 6 p.m. Like we do this unconsciously a gazillion times a day. And
yeah.
these moments of humaning, they get amped up when we are traveling, especially when we're traveling to places that racially, culturally, and economically look and feel and smell different than the ways that we are more accustomed to. right? Perhaps it happens when people are going to Western Europe in some ways too. Sure,
Oh,
certainly.
yeah.
I don't diminish the power of that kind of a travel. But since I work mostly in uh, introducing Global South to many people in the West, I see the ways that race and culture and uh, who has and who doesn't, how all of that is playing out and exacerbating what is already inside. Which, let's think of this for a moment. It's so understandable that people would short circuit when they go to Senegal for the first time, or they go to India for the first time, or they go to Malawi for the first time. Sure, it makes sense. Now, let's make sure that we're not short circuiting on the Senegalese and the Indians and the Malawans. Let's kind of keep our stuff intact, shall we?
Hmm.
Right? Number one. Number two, creating a container on those tours to those places where already things will be, quote, different, or a different kind of difference than many of our guests are perhaps used to or comfortable in, is exactly the opportunity to dial our intentional conversation up. I can't tell you, Mitch, how many people I have talked to who have read my book over the years have said, how come we went to Peru, or we did this, or I was part of this experience, or I was on this tour, and we never once mentioned racial difference. We never once mentioned the fact that we're mostly all white folks going into black and brown lands, and sometimes that can make us feel a little uncomfortable. That's not a
Yeah.
racist statement to make. That's just a human statement to make.
Yeah.
And to notice it. I notice this is the first time that I have been in all black space, is what some of my white colleagues and my white students and my white participants say when we are in different parts of Africa. And that's not racist to notice that. Many of the white folks that I have traveled with have rarely ever been in all black and all brown space.
Yeah.
Maybe, at a concert, or maybe at an event for an hour tour, but for a week, but for a month. Now, that can do something for us, being able to say some of that out loud. Not to solve it, not to fix it, but to be able to be like, oh, isn't that interesting that we're noticing these differences? And we're noticing
Hmm.
how that lands on us, and we're noticing what we're saying in our mind about it.
Hmm.
The noticing is the gateway to creating more meaning and creating more flexible containers for us.
I think that's been the power of your book. Um, the title says it all. Beyond Guilt Trips. It's a book that gives people permission
Yes.
to discuss these things and say things, because I know this. There's fear of saying the wrong thing.
Oh,
You
yes.
want to appear as the enlightened guest
Yes.
who who is there with respect and no racism. There's not a racist bone in my body.
Not me. No,
I
no.
know. And from their perspective, of course not. Like, they're good, kind, welcoming people to all of the people in their life,
Yep.
and those people are from different backgrounds, and so it's either fear or doesn't apply.
Hmm.
Um, and you gave a different box for these kinds of conversations.
Hmm.
And I
There's
don't know how you
so
see that box. Yeah.
hmm. There's such a quiet power of being able to normalize what is normal. I just had chills kind of inside as I just said that out loud, because it feels so big. It's such a simple sentence. To normalize what is actually normal feels revolutionary these days.
Hmm.
You have some discomfort with difference? That's normal. You aren't so sure what to say? That's normal. You're unused to using a squat potty than a sit down potty? That's normal. You're not used to eating with your hands? That's normal. That's normal. Now, normal noticings don't have to be racist when we normalize more normal noticings, right?
Can you say that again 3 times
No, I
fast,
can't.
please?
I can't. But these are just normal, everyday human. It's just, again, back to humaning. It's just humans humaning. And if we're able to center that on our trip to Senegal or France or in the gathering that I might host tonight, if we can center humans humaning a little bit more intentionally, then we don't have to be in our heads so much. It's like out here. Oh, yeah, you will feel some discomfort around the X or the Y because that's just what we humans do. I say that phrase a lot because that's what we humans do. And I can see like people's shoulders, they release a little bit, especially when I'm brought in, when there's so much tension, let's say in an organization, and there's been a lot of hurt and pain, and folks aren't sure if they actually want to be there. And here I come, not knowing how it's going to proceed, but being able to just say out loud, the feelings that you have are normal, and let's normalize the normalness of them so we can actually get to the business of navigating them. Otherwise, how are we supposed to even navigate what we don't acknowledge and what we're shaming ourselves and one another for feeling?
Let's normalize the normal and rehumanize the human.
Mm. Yes.
That's a great way to sort of come full circle in this conversation. And it would not be normal of me to keep you for the endless hours that I want to keep unpacking things with you. But this has already, I think, been a feast of insights and challenging ones, but also really welcoming ones, because I don't think you're asking of anybody to do anything but be human and be a human who notices and be
Yeah.
a business owner who creates spaces and don't shy away from meaning making.
Mm. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I want to make sure to remind people to check out your jewelry line on Instagram. If they haven't, if they haven't read,
'Cause that's really the takeaway of this
it
conversation.
is. Oh
Like,
no, that's gonna actually your author photo on the podcast will just be your jewelry,
oh,
your
fantastic.
necklace, or it'll be just a hand.
Woo.
No, but I love that interjection because this isn't meant to be a pompous conversation, and
Yes.
anybody who gets to know you for more than a minute understands that you laugh and you swear and you do all of the human things, and it's you're not coming at this from a high horse, you're coming at it from a really human sized horse, from a very tiny pony that doesn't make you any taller than anyone else. And um beyond guilt trips, are there any other resources or um, websites or anything that you wanted to invite people to see, to learn more about you?
I have a website, anutaranath.com, that folks can check out, which shares a little bit about my work and uh, beautiful photos of many of my collaborators. Um, and yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and, Instagram. Those are the places that I dabble in.
Great. Anu, thank you so much for being our first podcast of
Mm.
2026 on Tourpreneur.
Delightful. Absolutely delightful with you, Mitch. Thank you so much.